The observation deck on Zenthar Prime was quiet that morning. Commander Vexatal stood before the massive viewing screen, watching the small blue planet rotate slowly in space. Earth, the third planet from an ordinary yellow star. Home to 7 billion humans, who had no idea they were being watched. Vexatal had been observing Earth for 20 years now. It was his job, his assignment from the Galactic Council. Watch the humans. Record their progress. Make sure they stayed within acceptable limits. He found them interesting, in the way a scientist might find an ant colony interesting. They were busy, ambitious, and completely unaware of the larger universe around them. The humans had discovered faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. It was a crude version, nothing like the elegant systems used by the older civilizations. But it worked. They had spread quickly after that. Colonies on Mars, stations orbiting Jupiter's moons, research outposts scattered across their local star cluster. They called themselves explorers and pioneers. Vexatal called them predictable. Behind him, the council chamber began to fill with representatives from 47 different species. The morning session was about to begin. Today's topic was humanity, as it often was lately. The humans were expanding faster than expected, asking questions they shouldn't know to ask, developing technologies ahead of schedule. Some council members were getting nervous. Vexatal took his seat as the High Chancellor called the meeting to order. The discussion started immediately. Ambassador Kelsha, from the Vorthen Collective, expressed concern about human mining operations near the Proxima system. They were getting too close to an ancient Vorthen memorial site. Representative Darex from the Silicon Cooperative wanted to know why the humans were experimenting with quantum communications. That technology was restricted for good reason. The debate went on for hours. Some species wanted to make contact, to guide humanity properly. Others wanted to slow them down, limit their expansion. A few extreme voices even suggested elimination, though they were quickly silenced. The council had rules about such things. Younger species were to be observed and managed, not destroyed. Usually, while the council debated, Admiral Jake Morrison was having a very different kind of morning. He stood on the bridge of the USS Valiant, humanity's newest and largest warship, watching his crew run through training exercises. The Valiant was impressive by human standards. 300 meters long, armed with railguns and nuclear missiles, protected by electromagnetic shields, Morrison was proud of his ship and his crew, but he was also worried. Space was too quiet, too empty. Humanity had been exploring for 3 decades and found nothing. No alien signals, no ancient ruins, no signs of life, just endless silence. Morrison didn't believe in coincidences. The universe was too old, too vast to be empty. So, where was everyone? His second-in-command, Captain Helen Price, shared his concerns. They had discussed it privately, many times. If aliens existed and were advanced enough for space travel, they should have found evidence by now. The fact that they hadn't found anything meant one of 2 things. Either life was incredibly rare, or someone was hiding it. Neither option was comforting. 3 light-years from Earth, Captain Lisa Garrett was having a good day. Her research vessel, the Endeavour, had just discovered something amazing, an asteroid made entirely of crystallized carbon, floating in the darkness between stars. Her crew was excited, taking samples and running analysis. The discovery would make headlines back home. It might even earn them a research grant extension. Lisa loved her job. She had joined the space program 15 years ago, fresh out of university with a degree in astrophysics and a head full of dreams. The Endeavour wasn't a military ship, like the Valiant. It was smaller, older, and had only basic defensive systems. But it was hers, and her crew of 40 scientists and engineers were the best in their fields. Her sensor operator, Lieutenant Cole Jackson, was running a deep space scan when he noticed something odd, a flicker on the edge of their detection range, probably just background radiation or a sensor glitch. But Cole was thorough. He made a note to check it again later. He had no way of knowing that 16 different alien sensor arrays were watching his ship at that exact moment, recording every detail. Far from both the Valiant and the Endeavour, orbiting in the shadow of Saturn, Dr. Ben Carter was working late again. His laboratory was cold and sterile, filled with quantum computers and experimental equipment that hummed with barely contained energy. Ben had been working on Project Lighthouse for 5 years. It was supposed to be a simple communication system, a way to send messages instantly across space without the delays caused by light speed. But it had become something more. Ben had discovered that quantum entanglement could do more than carry messages. It could carry targeting data. It could coordinate systems across vast distances with perfect timing. It could turn humanity's scattered defenses into a single, unified network that could think and respond faster than any human mind. The military implications were obvious, but Ben tried not to think about them. He was a scientist, not a soldier. He wanted to use Lighthouse to unite humanity's colonies, to make their scattered settlements feel less alone in the dark. He had no idea that in 72 hours, his invention would change everything. Back on Xanthar Prime, the council session finally ended. Commander Vexatal returned to his observation post and looked at Earth again. The planet looked so peaceful from up here, so small and fragile. The humans didn't know how lucky they were, living in ignorance. Knowledge of the greater galaxy brought responsibility, danger, and difficult choices. Vextal wondered what the humans would do if they knew the truth. Would they be excited to learn they weren't alone? Would they be afraid? Would they try to make friends? Or prepare for war? He would probably never know. The Council's policy was clear. Young species were to be observed for at least 500 years before contact. Humanity had at least 3 more centuries of isolation ahead of them, or so he thought. In 72 hours, everything would change. The careful observation would end. The peaceful isolation would shatter, and the galaxy would learn that humanity was not like other young species. They were something different, something dangerous, something that should have been left alone, but it was too late for that now. The wheels were already turning. Decisions were being made. And soon, very soon, the stars would go silent. The attack came on a Tuesday morning. Ship time. Captain Lisa Garrett was in her ready room, reviewing sample analysis from the crystal asteroid, when the first alarm went off. It was a proximity alert. The kind that triggered when something large appeared on sensors without warning. Lisa was on her feet and moving toward the bridge before the second alarm even started. Cole Jackson was already at his station when she arrived, his fingers flying across the controls as he tried to make sense of what the sensors were telling him. 3 massive objects had appeared from nowhere, each one reading as 5 times the size of the Endeavour. They were less than 50,000 kilometers away, and closing fast. Lisa dropped into her captain's chair and pulled up the tactical display. Her hands went cold when she saw them. The objects were ships, clearly artificial, but like nothing in any human database. They were organic-looking, all curves and flowing lines, with surfaces that seemed to pulse with inner light. Weapon ports were opening along their hulls, like hungry mouths. There was no mistaking their intent. Cole was already sending out a hailing signal on all frequencies. Standard first contact protocols. They announced themselves as a peaceful research vessel, requested identification, asked for communication. The alien ships didn't respond. They just kept coming, weapons charging, with a building whine that the Endeavour's sensors could detect even across empty space. Lisa made her decision in seconds. There was no outrunning those ships, not with the Endeavour's civilian engines. There was no fighting them either, not with their small defensive weapons, but they could send a warning. Cole was already on it, his fingers working to compile a data package. Full sensor logs, tactical analysis, everything they were seeing. He wrapped it in quantum encryption and aimed it toward the one place that might be able to do something about it. Earth. The first shot hit before Cole could finish. The Endeavor's shields, designed to protect against micrometeorites and radiation, collapsed instantly under the alien weapon's power. The ship lurched violently, throwing crew members from their stations. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the vessel. Lisa hauled herself back into her chair and saw the damage reports flooding in. Hull breach on Deck 3. 17 crew members dead. Environmental systems failing in sections 2 through 5. Cole finished the transmission and hit send just as the second shot struck. This one tore through the engineering section, ripping apart the Endeavor's engines in a cascade of explosions. The ship went dark, except for emergency lighting. Gravity failed, leaving everyone floating in sudden weightlessness. Through the viewport, Lisa could see the 3 alien vessels circling her dying ship, like sharks waiting for their prey to stop struggling. She grabbed the communications console and opened a ship-wide channel. Her voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. She told her crew she was proud of them. She told them their discovery would be remembered. She told them that Earth would know what happened here. She didn't tell them that she was terrified, that she didn't want to die, that she had a sister back home who she would never see again. The third shot came, and Lisa's world ended in fire and silence. On Xanthar Prime, Commander Vexatal watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The human vessel had been eliminated cleanly, with minimal collateral damage. The message had been sent. It had taken 3 months to get council approval for this action. 3 months of debates and votes, and careful planning. But it was done now. Humanity would learn their place. The council had debated many options. Some wanted to simply warn the humans away from restricted areas. Others suggested establishing a blockade around their space. But Vexatal had argued for something more direct. Young species needed to understand the hierarchy. They needed to know that there were rules, and breaking those rules had consequences. A demonstration of power was the kindest option in the long run. Better to teach them fear now than to let them continue unchecked until a harsher lesson became necessary. The vote had been close. 19 species in favor, 16 against, 12 abstaining. But a majority was a majority. The council had authorized the strike, choosing the Endeavor as their target. An isolated research vessel, far from Earth's main settlements. The deaths would be regrettable, but minimal, and humanity would learn without losing too much. Vextal turned to address the council chamber. The representatives were watching him expectantly, waiting for his assessment. He activated the holographic display and showed them the debris field where the Endeavor had been. Clean, efficient, effective. The humans would receive the sensor data from their own ship's final transmission. They would see what happened. They would understand that they were being watched, that there were powers in the galaxy far beyond their ability to resist. They would respond with caution, perhaps even fear. They would slow their expansion, become more careful, more respectful of boundaries they didn't know existed. That was the theory anyway. That was how it had worked with dozens of other young species over the millennia. A show of force, a demonstration of power, and the newcomers learned their place in the galactic order. It was a tested method, proven over thousands of years. Vextal had no reason to believe humanity would be any different. He had no way of knowing that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 80 years. That every war, every conflict, every dark moment in their history had taught them the same lesson over and over. The universe was not kind to the weak. Survival belonged to those who could fight back, who could hit harder than they were hit, who could turn threat into warning and warning into example. The distress signal from the Endeavor traveled through space at faster than light speed, riding quantum channels that human scientists barely understood. It took 14 seconds to reach Earth, 14 seconds for the encrypted data package to arrive at Sol Defense Command and trigger every alarm in the facility. Admiral Morrison was in a budget meeting when his aide burst through the door. The look on her face told him everything he needed to know before she said a word. They had always known this day might come. First contact. They had hoped it would be peaceful, but they had prepared for the alternative. Morrison followed his aide to the command center at a run, his heart pounding in his chest. The screens showed everything. The Endeavor's final moments, played out in cold sensor data and tactical analysis. The alien ships, their weapons, their cold efficiency. 17 people dead, a research vessel destroyed. An act of war committed against humanity without warning, without provocation, without mercy. Morrison looked at the data and felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. This was the moment. The decision point. How humanity responded in the next few minutes would define their future in the galaxy. They could hide, pull back, show fear, or they could show the galaxy what 3 billion years of evolution had created. He reached for his communicator and called Dr. Ben Carter. The scientist answered on the first ring, his face pale on the screen. He had seen the reports, too. He knew what Morrison was going to ask, and even before the Admiral spoke, Ben was already moving toward his laboratory, already bringing Project Lighthouse online. Dr. Ben Carter's laboratory was chaos. Alarms blared from every terminal as Project Lighthouse activated for the first time at full power. Ben's team of engineers and scientists scrambled to their stations, faces pale with fear and excitement. They had tested individual components, run simulations, done everything but flip the final switch. Now, there was no choice. War had come to humanity, and their experimental weapon was the only response that made sense. Ben pulled up the main control interface and watched as the system came online. Lighthouse was beautiful in its simplicity. Quantum entanglement linked every defense platform, weapons, satellite, and military installation in human space into a single network. It could communicate instantly across any distance, coordinate attacks with perfect timing, and process tactical data faster than any human could think. They had built it hoping they would never need it. That hope was gone now. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on Ben's screen. The Admiral looked older than he had an hour ago, the weight of command showing in every line of his face. He didn't waste time with questions or discussion. They both knew what needed to happen. Morrison gave the authorization codes, and Ben entered them with steady hands. The fate of humanity now rested on an experimental system and a decision made in anger and grief. The Lighthouse network spread across human space like a web of light. Every military installation from Mars to the outer colonies suddenly became aware of every other installation. Data flowed between them in microseconds. The system absorbed the Endeavor's final transmission, analyzed the alien vessels, identified their energy signatures and hull composition. Then, it went hunting. Quantum sensors swept outward from Earth, following the trail back to its source. The alien ships had come from somewhere, and they had left traces, energy signatures, quantum distortions, the subtle fingerprints that faster than light travel always left behind. The Lighthouse system found them in 1.2 seconds. The Kreenath Empire, centered on a binary star system 43 light-years from Earth. Population, 6 billion. Industrial capacity, massive. Military strength overwhelming by any conventional measure. The system didn't care about conventional measures. It identified targets with cold precision. The Kreenath homeworld and its orbital installations. Military shipyards around the system's largest moon. Command stations at strategic points throughout their territory. 317 targets in total. Every single one selected for maximum strategic impact. Ben watched the target list appear on his screen and felt his stomach turn. 6 billion people. An entire civilization about to die because of a decision he had helped make. He looked at Morrison's face on the split screen. The Admiral's expression was hard, but Ben could see the pain behind it. This wasn't murder driven by hate or cruelty. This was survival. This was the cold mathematics of sending a message so clear that no one would ever mistake it. Morrison spoke softly. The warheads are authorized. May God forgive us. The quantum displacement warheads had been humanity's most closely guarded secret. They didn't travel through space in any conventional sense. Instead, they used quantum tunneling to simply appear at their destination, bypassing every defense and countermeasure. Each warhead was small, no bigger than a briefcase, containing just a few milligrams of antimatter suspended in a quantum field. When the field collapsed, matter met antimatter, and the result was devastation. The Lighthouse system launched all 317 warheads simultaneously. One moment, they were in secure bunkers and weapons platforms across human space. The next moment, they were at their targets, quantum fields beginning to collapse. The entire strike package deployed in 4.6 seconds. Nothing in the galaxy had ever moved that fast or hit that hard. On the Kreeneth homeworld, people were going about their daily lives. The morning shift was starting in the capital city's industrial district. Children were heading to learning centers. The planetary defense grid was at normal readiness, scanning space for threats that might take hours to arrive. No one was looking for threats that could appear from nowhere. 64 warheads materialized in orbit around the planet. The quantum fields collapsed in perfect synchronization. Antimatter met matter and converted directly to energy, just as Einstein's equations predicted. Each warhead released energy equivalent to 100 megatons, 64 multiplied by 100 megatons, released simultaneously, over a planet with no shields, no warning, no time to react. The explosions lit up the system like a new sun. Orbital stations vaporized instantly. The atmosphere ignited, creating firestorms that swept across continents in seconds. The oceans boiled. The crust cracked. In less than a minute, the Kreeneth homeworld went from a living planet to a dead rock, its surface scoured clean of everything that had made it home to billions. The military shipyards died just as quickly. 112 warheads appeared among the massive construction platforms, turning years of work and thousands of partially built warships into expanding clouds of superheated vapor. The Kreeneth Empire's ability to build new vessels, to replace losses, to maintain military power, ceased to exist in the time it took to draw a breath. Command stations throughout Kreeneth space blinked out one after another. 47 locations where military commanders coordinated fleets and planned strategies simply vanished. Replaced by debris fields and radiation, the entire military command structure of the Empire died before anyone could send a warning, before a single ship could scramble, before anyone even understood what was happening. It took 14 minutes from authorization to completion, 14 minutes to eliminate an interstellar empire, 14 minutes to kill 6 billion people and reduce a civilization that had existed for 10,000 years to scattered refugees on distant colonies. 14 minutes to announce to the galaxy that humanity was not prey. Ben watched the tactical display and felt nothing. That was the worst part. He knew he should feel horror, guilt, revulsion. He had just helped kill more people than had died in all of Earth's wars combined. But all he felt was a cold satisfaction. They had attacked first. They had killed 17 innocent researchers. This was the reply. Let the galaxy understand what it meant to make an enemy of Earth. Morrison appeared on the screen again. The Admiral's face was gray, but his voice was steady. Dr. Carter, prepare to broadcast a message on all frequencies. I want everyone out there to hear this. Everyone who was watching. Everyone who thought humanity was weak. Ben nodded and set up the transmission. It would go out on every frequency humanity knew, carried by quantum channels and conventional radio alike. Whoever was listening, wherever they were hiding, they would hear Admiral Morrison's words. They would understand that the galaxy had changed in 14 minutes. The message recorded, Morrison's face broadcast to every corner of space within reach. He sat calmly at a desk, wearing a simple suit instead of a uniform. When he spoke, his voice was measured and clear, like a teacher explaining a difficult lesson. He told them about the Endeavor. He told them about the unprovoked attack. He showed them technical specifications of Lighthouse, of the warheads, of humanity's defensive network. He made it clear that what they had just done could be repeated. Anytime, anywhere. Then Morrison leaned forward and his eyes hardened. He told the Watchers that humanity was done being observed, done being tested, done being victims. He explained, in simple terms, that Earth had evolved apex predators for 3 billion years, and those predators had learned to use tools. He made it clear that humanity remembered every threat, every injury, every attack, and they responded in kind. The message ended with a final warning. Come in peace and find friends. Come in war and find extinction. The choice belonged to the galaxy now. Humanity had made their position clear. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos the moment the sensors confirmed what they were seeing. Every alarm in the facility screamed at once. Emergency protocols activated automatically. Representatives from 47 species began shouting in dozens of languages, their voices mixing into a cacophony of panic and disbelief. Commander Vexatal stood frozen at his observation post, staring at the display that showed where the Kryneth homeworld used to be. Used to be. Past tense. The planet was gone. Not conquered, not damaged, but actually gone. Scoured clean of life in minutes. Along with their shipyards, their command stations, their military infrastructure, an entire interstellar empire had ceased to exist while Vexatal was walking back from a break. Ambassador Kel Shah from the Vorthan Collective was the first to find her voice. She spoke in a whisper that somehow cut through the noise. How is this possible? There. Level 2. They don't have this technology. They can't reach across space like this. They shouldn't even know the Kryneth exist. But they did, and they had. The evidence was displayed across every screen in the chamber. The Kryneth Empire, which had controlled 14 worlds and commanded fleets capable of cracking planets, was gone. Reduced to refugees and debris in the time it took most species to have lunch. Representative Darix from the Silicon Cooperative pulled up the technical analysis that had come with the human transmission. His crystalline form flickered with agitation as he processed the data. They call it quantum displacement. The weapons simply appear at their target. No travel time. No interception possible. And this network they've built, this lighthouse system, it coordinates everything instantly, across vast distances. We've been monitoring their quantum experiments for years and completely missed what they were building. Another representative spoke up, his voice shaking. We need to respond immediately. Destroy Earth before they can do this to anyone else. They're clearly a threat to galactic stability. The chamber fell silent at those words. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. Ambassador Kel Shah shook her head slowly. Did you not see what they just did? They detected an attack, backtraced it to its source, identified all strategic targets, and eliminated an empire in 14 minutes. And you want to attack them? What do you think happens to us? Vexatal finally found his voice. This is my fault. I recommended the strike on the Endeavor. I said it would teach them caution. I said young species always respond with fear when shown superior force. He looked at the debris field on the screen. I was wrong. Completely wrong. The High Chancellor called for order, his ancient voice cutting through the debate. The chamber quieted, though the tension remained thick. The Chancellor looked old and tired, far older than his 600 years. He had guided the Council through countless crises, but nothing like this. In all his centuries of service, he had never seen a species jump from level 2 to capable of this kind of devastation overnight. We need to understand what we're dealing with, the Chancellor said. Play the human transmission again. All of it. Admiral Morrison's recorded message played on the main display. The representatives watched in silence this time, really listening to the human's words. When Morrison spoke about humanity being descendants of apex predators, several council members shifted uncomfortably. When he showed the technical specifications, proving that the strike on Kryneth Prime was not a desperate last effort but a controlled demonstration of power, the implications became clear. Earth had not responded in fear or desperation. They had responded with calculated, overwhelming force designed to send a message. They had not eliminated the Kryneth Empire, because it was necessary for their survival. They had done it to prove a point. They could have destroyed military targets and left the civilian population alone. Instead, they had chosen to eliminate everything, to make sure no one could miss the message. Come in peace or don't come at all. And if you come in war, bring something better than the Kreeneth brought. Because they're not here anymore to tell you how badly things can go. The 16 species who had voted against the strike on the Endeavor began calling for emergency sessions. They wanted to distance themselves from what had happened. To make it clear, they had opposed the action. They wanted to reach out to Earth, to explain that not everyone had been in favor of attacking them. They wanted to survive. The 19 species who had voted in favor of the strike went quiet. Their representatives huddled together, faces pale, discussing options in hushed voices. Several of them had military forces larger than the Kreeneth. Several of them had been considering their own demonstrations of power against humanity. Those plans were being shredded and burned now, replaced by desperate defensive strategies. Because the real message wasn't about the Kreeneth. The real message was about reach. Earth had struck targets 43 light-years away, with no warning and perfect precision, which meant they could strike anywhere within that range, which meant dozens of civilizations were suddenly within humanity's effective weapons range, and there was no defense against weapons that simply appeared at their target. Ambassador Kel Shah stood and addressed the chamber. We need to send a diplomatic mission to Earth immediately. We need to explain that the attack on the Endeavor was not Council policy, that there was significant opposition, that many of us want peaceful relations. And what if they say no? Someone asked. What if they decide, we're all threats, then we die, Kel Shah said simply. Just like the Kreeneth. But at least we die trying to make peace, instead of trying to assert dominance over a species that just proved they won't be dominated. The debate continued for hours. Plans were made and discarded. Proposals were drafted and rewritten. The galaxy was adapting to a new reality, one where Earth was no longer a curiosity to be observed but a power to be negotiated with. The change was happening fast, driven by fear and necessity. Light-years away on the USSS Valiant, Admiral Morrison's second transmission went out. This one was shorter, directed specifically at the Galactic Council that he now knew existed. He offered talks. He proposed neutral meeting grounds. He made it clear that Earth wanted peace, but was prepared for war. He was diplomatic and reasonable, and absolutely terrifying in his calm certainty. Captain Helen Price stood beside Morrison as he recorded the message. When it was done, she spoke quietly. Sir, did we do the right thing? Morrison was silent for a long moment. I don't know, Helen, but I know we did the necessary thing. The galaxy was watching us like we were animals in a zoo. They killed our people to teach us a lesson. We taught them one back. Now they know we're not animals. We're not curiosities. We're equals. Whether they like it or not. At what cost? 6 billion Kreeneth lives, Morrison said, his voice heavy. And probably my soul. But not human lives. Not anymore. Not if I can help it. On Earth, the reaction was mixed. Some people celebrated, proud that humanity had struck back against alien aggression. Others protested, horrified at the scale of the response. The news showed both demonstrations and counter-demonstrations. Politicians gave speeches. Religious leaders offered prayers for the dead, both human and alien. The world struggled to understand what had happened and what it meant for humanity's future. Dr. Ben Carter watched the news in his laboratory, alone except for his thoughts. His invention had killed 6 billion people. It had also potentially saved humanity from an unknown number of future conflicts. History would judge whether the trade was worth it. Ben wasn't sure he wanted to live long enough to find out. The galaxy spent the next 48 hours in a state of shock. Messages flew between civilizations. Alliances shifted. Military budgets were redirected toward defensive systems. Everyone was asking the same questions. Who were these humans? How had they been so badly underestimated? And most importantly, What happened next? 6 months after the incident, Captain Emma Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the USSS Horizon and watched the alien space station grow larger on her view screen. The station was massive, easily 10 times the size of anything humanity had built. It hung in space like a small moon, bristling with sensors, and what were probably weapons. This was Zenthar Prime, home of the Galactic Council, and Emma was about to become the first human to set foot on it. The journey from Earth had taken 3 weeks, even with humanity's improved faster than light drives. The Horizon was new, built specifically for this mission. It was 3 times the size of the old Endeavor and carried enough weapons to level a small moon. The message was clear. Humanity came in peace, but they came prepared. Lieutenant Ryan Brooks, her first officer, watched the tactical display with careful attention. "Captain, we're being scanned. Multiple frequencies, very sophisticated. They're getting a good look at our weapons systems." "Let them look," Emma said calmly. "That's part of why we're here. They need to understand what we're capable of now." The Horizon had a crew of 200, split evenly between diplomats and military personnel. The diplomats were there to negotiate Earth's place in galactic society. The military was there to make sure the diplomats came home alive. Everyone understood that this mission could go badly in dozens of different ways. But someone had to take the first step, and Emma had volunteered. A transmission came through from the station. Ambassador Kelsha's face appeared on the screen, her alien features showing what Emma hoped was friendliness. The translator software converted her words into English, with only a slight delay. "Captain Rodriguez, welcome to Zenthar Prime. We are prepared to receive you. Will you come aboard alone, or do you wish to bring an escort?" Emma had thought about this question for weeks. Bringing armed guards would show strength but also mistrust. Coming alone would show confidence, but could be seen as arrogance or stupidity. She made her decision based on what she thought would work best for humanity's long-term interests. "I'll bring 2 people with me, unarmed. We're here to talk, not to fight." Kelsha seemed pleased by that answer. "Acceptable. We will send a shuttle to dock with your ship." While they waited, Emma reviewed the briefing materials one more time. The galaxy had changed dramatically in 6 months. The 16 species who had opposed the attack on the Endeavor had formed something called the Terran Accord, a coalition dedicated to peaceful relations with Earth. They controlled about 30% of known space and had significant economic power. They saw humanity as potential allies and trading partners. The 19 species who had voted for the attack had taken a different path. They called themselves the Stability Front and claimed their goal was maintaining order and preventing chaos. In reality, they were terrified of humanity and spent most of their resources on defensive systems. They controlled about 40% of known space, but were deeply divided on how to handle Earth. The remaining 12 species who had abstained from the original vote were still making up their minds. They watched and waited, trying to determine which side would come out ahead. They controlled the remaining 30% of space, and would likely be the deciding factor in however galactic politics developed. The shuttle arrived and Emma, along with 2 carefully chosen diplomats, transferred over. The interior was beautiful. All flowing organic designs and bioluminescent lighting. The pilot was some kind of crystalline being who didn't speak but communicated through patterns of light. Emma found the whole experience surreal. 6 months ago, humanity didn't know aliens existed. Now she was riding in an alien shuttle to meet with a galactic council. Zenthar Prime's docking bay was enormous. Emma counted at least 20 different ship designs, from small scouts to massive vessels that dwarfed the horizon. Representatives from dozens of species moved through the corridors, going about their business. Some stopped to stare at the humans. Emma couldn't tell if their expressions were curiosity, fear, or something else entirely. Ambassador Kelsha met them at the dock. She was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. She moved with a grace that made Emma feel clumsy by comparison, but when she spoke, her voice through the translator was warm and welcoming. "Captain Rodriguez, thank you for coming. I know this required great courage on your part. Emma shook the offered hand, noting that the gesture must have been researched from human databases. Thank you for inviting us, Ambassador. Earth is ready to discuss how we fit into the larger galactic community. The walk to the council chamber took 15 minutes. Emma used the time to observe everything she could. The station was clean, efficient, and clearly very old. The technology was far beyond Earth's current level, but not impossibly so. Give humanity a few decades, and they might catch up. That thought was probably why everyone seemed so nervous around her. The council chamber was impressive. A massive circular room with viewing screens showing star systems and data streams. Representatives from 47 species sat in assigned sections, all watching as Emma entered. The room went quiet. Every eye turned toward the three humans, walking calmly to the center of the chamber. High Chancellor Morath, a being who looked vaguely like a very old tree, spoke first. His voice was deep and carried the weight of centuries. Captain Rodriguez, you represent a species that has changed our galaxy in profound ways. Before we discuss the future, we must address the past. The attack on your vessel Endeavor was a mistake, opposed by many of us, but approved by enough to proceed. We offer our sincere regret for the loss of your crew. Emma had prepared for this moment. The attack killed 17 researchers who were engaged in peaceful scientific study. Earth responded as we believed necessary to ensure such an attack would never happen again. We targeted only the species responsible, though we understand our response was considered extreme by galactic standards. Extreme, said one of the representatives from the Stability Front. You killed 6 billion people. You killed 17 of ours, Emma replied calmly. We made sure you couldn't kill any more. That was our message. Attack Earth, and we will respond with overwhelming force. We won't negotiate. We won't show restraint. And we won't accept losses just to seem reasonable to observers. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species supported Emma's position. Others condemned it. The debate raged for an hour before Chancellor Morath called for order. When the chamber finally quieted, he turned back to Emma. You understand that your actions have created fear throughout the galaxy. That many species now see humanity as a threat? Yes, Emma said. We understand that completely. But we'd rather be feared than pitied. We'd rather be considered dangerous than be considered victims. And we'd rather have others hesitate before attacking us than have them think we're easy targets. Ambassador Kelsha spoke up. Not all of us fear you, Captain. Some of us see potential for partnership. Earth has technology we don't understand. Perspectives we haven't considered. And clearly, the strength to defend themselves and their allies. The Terran Accord believes that working with humanity benefits everyone. Over the next 6 hours, Emma participated in the most important negotiations in human history. Territory was discussed. Trade routes were proposed. Technology sharing was debated. Military boundaries were established. Slowly, painfully, the framework of Earth's place in galactic society began to take shape. The final agreement gave Earth full sovereignty over their explored space, about 50 light-years in radius. They gained access to certain galactic trade networks and information databases. In return, they agreed to respect established territorial boundaries and participate in a new council specifically for addressing disputes before they became conflicts. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Emma transmitted the proposed treaty back to Earth for approval, knowing it would spark massive debate. Some people would think she had given away too much. Others would think she had demanded too little. But she believed it was fair, and more importantly, it established humanity as equals rather than subjects. That night, alone in her quarters on the horizon, Emma looked out at the stars and thought about how much had changed. 6 months ago, humanity had been alone, ignorant, vulnerable. Now they were part of something larger, for better or worse. They had allies and enemies, trading partners and rivals. They had announced themselves to the galaxy not with hope or friendship, but with fire and fury. History would judge whether that was the right choice. Light years away, in a medical facility on Europa, Captain Lisa Garrett woke up from cryosleep. She was one of 3 survivors pulled from the Endeavour's wreckage by automated rescue drones. The doctors told her she had been asleep for 6 months. They told her what had happened after her distress signal reached Earth. They showed her the news footage, the diplomatic summaries, the new reality of humanity's place in the galaxy. Lisa watched it all in silence. When they asked her how she felt about Earth's response, about the 6 billion Kreeneth who had died because of what happened to her ship, she took a long time to answer. Finally, she said simply, "Good. Let them remember what it costs to attack us." On Earth, Dr. Ben Carter stood in his laboratory, looking at the lighthouse network that now connected every human settlement across 50 light years. His invention had started a war and ended it in the same day. It had killed billions, but potentially saved billions more by preventing future conflicts. He still wasn't sure how he felt about that, and suspected he never would be. Admiral Morrison prepared for his retirement, knowing the rest of his life would be defined by those 14 minutes when he authorized the strike on Kreeneth Prime. Some called him a hero. Others called him a war criminal. He called himself a soldier who made the necessary choice and tried not to think too much about the price. The galaxy continued turning, adapting to its new reality. The stars that had gone silent in 14 minutes were slowly finding their voice again, speaking in a new language of caution and respect. Humanity had arrived, not as children seeking guidance, but as adults demanding recognition. The age of observation was over. The age of participation had begun, and nothing would ever be the same.